The glass door in Margot's dorm room had been left slightly ajar when she rushed to pack for the weekend, and the late afternoon breeze kept nudging it open a little farther, as if insisting on revealing something she wasn't ready to face. The thin curtain breathed in and out with each gust, brushing her arm while she stuffed clothes into a small suitcase. She paused, watching that door move in its quiet defiance. It felt like a mirror of her own life, nothing fully closed, nothing fully open. Just a threshold she kept avoiding, afraid of what side she belonged to. Harvard's campus stretched behind her through the window, red brick glowing under the fading sun. 22 years old, rich British heritage, pale skin that flushed easily, and a face most people would call delicately beautiful, Margot looked like someone certain of who she was. But her blue eyes, usually guarded, carried a softness she rarely let anyone see. Somewhere beneath the expensive shoes, the carefully chosen outfits, and the inherited confidence, she was still a girl who didn't understand why nothing she touched ever made her heart race the way she imagined it should. Lillian kept knocking on the doorframe. "Are you finally ready, or do I need to drag you out of here?" Margot snapped out of her daze and zipped the suitcase. Lillian, 21, warm smile, freckles across her cheeks, hair tied in a messy bun because she never cared enough to brush it properly, was the kind of person who made everything feel less dramatic. Margot admired that about her, even if she'd never say it out loud. In the past year, they'd fallen into an easy friendship, built on study sessions, late-night ramen bowls, and shared exhaustion from studio critiques. I'm ready," Margot insisted, grabbing her coat. The hallway smelled of floor polish and old books, and their footsteps echoed as they headed out. Margot kept thinking about the open door behind them, like it was whispering after her. She shook it off. She had promised Lillian she'd spend the long weekend at her mother's house, a quiet place about 130 miles away. Margot imagined a simple home, something warm and slightly chaotic, maybe with mismatched chairs and a porch swing. She had no idea what awaited her. The train ride began with students chatting loudly, but the farther they traveled from Cambridge, the more the noise dissolved into white noise and rushing wind. Margot sat by the window, her breath fogging the glass every few minutes. Outside, the world blurred into long strokes of green, brown, and gold. Lillian talked about how good it would be to disconnect for a few days. No assignments, no deadlines, no roommates complaining about paint fumes. Margot nodded, but her mind drifted again. She'd ended a casual relationship only 2 weeks earlier with a guy from her art history class. He was kind. Attractive in that predictable Ivy League way. And yet every moment with him felt like watching someone else's life through a window. She never felt the spark, the nervous excitement, the pull. Only a vague obligation, as if she were trying to assemble a puzzle that didn't match the picture on the box. The train slowed as they approached a small station surrounded by pines. The air that rushed in as the doors opened carried the scent of cold earth and leaves beginning to decay into fall. Margot hugged her coat tighter around her shoulders. Then she saw her. Aurora. She stood leaning against a silver Subaru, one hand in her coat pocket, the other brushing a strand of dark hair away from her cheek as the wind tried to claim it. She looked effortlessly elegant, 42, tall, long hair cascading in gentle waves, and an expression that mixed resilience and softness. There was something about her posture, straight yet relaxed, that made her seem like a woman who had learned to carry her own weight and still move gracefully through the world. When Aurora's eyes lifted and met Margot's, a quiet recognition rippled through the air, though they had never seen each other before. Aurora smiled politely at first, but then her gaze lingered a second longer on the young blonde standing beside Lillian. "Mom!" Lillian ran into her arms. Aurora hugged her tightly, her voice warm. "I missed you, honey." Then Aurora turned to Margot. "You must be Margot. I've heard a lot about you." Her accent carried a faint trace of New England, softened by years of speaking gently. Margot took her hand, and something almost imperceptible happened. A subtle warmth traveled up her wrist, surprising her. She let go quickly, pretending to adjust her suitcase. "It's lovely to meet you," Margot said, voice steady though her pulse wasn't. The drive to the house wound through quiet roads lined with tall trees that filtered the last of the sunlight into shifting ribbons. Lillian chatted non-stop about classes and professors. Aurora responded with affectionate teasing. Margot watched the road, though occasionally her gaze drifted to Aurora's profile, defined jawline, a few faint lines near her eyes that made her even more striking, and a focus so calm it felt magnetic. Each time Aurora glanced at her in the rearview mirror, Margot looked away, pretending to be interested in the passing scenery. The house appeared just as the sky turned a deeper blue. It wasn't simple at all, more like an architectural retreat, clearly designed by someone who understood both structure and emotion. Clean lines, wide windows, warm outdoor lights reflecting on polished wood. When they stepped out of the car, Margot inhaled the scent of pine mixed with something floral drifting from the garden. Inside, everything carried Aurora's signature: subtle art pieces, carefully chosen textures, natural tones. It felt lived in but curated, touched by someone who saw beauty in balance. The air smelled faintly of vanilla candles and red wine. "Make yourselves at home," Aurora said, hanging her coat. "I opened a bottle already." "Long week." Lillian laughed. "Since the divorce, she's basically become a wine enthusiast." Aurora rolled her eyes, but her smile showed a slice of vulnerability. "It's an expensive coping mechanism. But effective." Margot watched the exchange quietly. She sensed something else beneath Aurora's humor, a heaviness, a disappointment that still lived near the surface. She wondered what kind of love had left a woman like that bruised. And why the thought of Aurora being hurt made her chest tighten in a way she didn't understand. Later, after settling her things in the guest room, Margot wandered into the hallway and found the glass door that led to the back deck. It was slightly open, swaying with the night breeze, just like her dorm room door earlier. She reached out to close it but paused, sensing someone behind her. Aurora stood there, holding 2 glasses of wine. "That door never stays shut," Aurora said with a small smile. "The house insists on breathing." Margot felt her throat tighten. Maybe some things aren't meant to stay closed. Aurora's eyes flickered with something: surprise, curiosity, maybe recognition of a truth neither dared to name. She handed her a glass, fingers brushing lightly against Margot's. The touch was fleeting, but the warmth of it lingered long after. They walked to the deck, where the night wrapped around them softly. The trees whispered with the wind, and distant crickets sang in the dark. Every few moments, Margot found herself looking at Aurora not directly, but through reflections on the glass, as if she were studying a painting instead of a person. Aurora spoke about her work as an architect, the long hours, the divorce that felt both like a liberation and a wound. Margot listened more intently than she had listened to anyone in months. Something about Aurora's voice, low, steady, edged with nostalgia, pulled her in like gravity. A silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, just full. Margot opened her mouth to say something, but a sudden sound of Lillian calling from inside interrupted the moment. Aurora turned toward the voice, but not before her gaze brushed Margot's once more, a slow, searching second that made Margot's skin prickle with awareness. She wasn't sure what almost happened there, or what she had almost said. But the open door behind them swayed again with the wind, as if urging her forward. And Margot felt, for the first time in her life, the beginning of a pull she could no longer ignore. The next morning began with pale sunlight pouring through the wide kitchen windows, turning the marble counter into a soft, glowing surface. Margot walked in barefoot, her hair slightly tangled from sleep, wearing an oversized sweatshirt from a student art exhibition. She paused in the doorway when she saw Aurora already there, sleeves rolled up, whisking eggs with a slow, deliberate rhythm. The subtle scent of rosemary and warm butter drifted through the room, wrapping the air in something comforting and intimate. Aurora looked over her shoulder. "Good morning, Harvard." "Sleep well." Margot laughed quietly. I can't tell if that's a compliment or if you're making fun of me. Both, Aurora smirked, sliding a pan onto the stove. The casual teasing surprised Margot. It felt warm, familiar, as if they'd known each other longer than a single evening. She moved closer, leaning against the opposite counter, watching Aurora's movements, precise, graceful, almost like choreography. Lillian eventually joined them, half awake, stumbling toward the coffee maker with a groan. My children of the night, Aurora teased. If you two survive morning, you'll survive anything. Margot couldn't resist smiling at the way Aurora's humor softened the room. She noticed how the morning light settled around Aurora, catching in her hair, outlining the curve of her jaw. She wondered, not for the first time, why she was paying attention to those details, why she kept noticing the way Aurora moved, breathed, existed. After breakfast, Lillian announced she needed to drive into town to pick up supplies for her photography project. Mom, can I take the car? Aurora hesitated a moment. Drive carefully. And text me when you arrive. When Lillian left, the house fell into an unexpected quiet. Margot sat at the dining table, sketchbook in front of her, but her pencil barely moved. The silence wasn't empty, it was thick, humming with a presence she couldn't name. Aurora walked in holding a bundle of fresh linens. Since you're staying a few nights, I thought you might want extra blankets. The house can get cold when the wind shifts. Margot touched the fabric. It was soft, smelling faintly of cedar and laundry soap. Thank you. You didn't have to. I wanted to, Aurora said simply. The words landed between them with more weight than they should have. Margot felt something warm bloom in her chest. She looked up and found Aurora watching her, just watching, openly, calmly, as if trying to read something behind her eyes. They spent the late morning cleaning up the kitchen together. Margot washed the dishes while Aurora dried them. Their elbows brushed more than once, lightly, accidentally, though neither moved away. At one point, Aurora reached for the same plate Margot was holding, and their fingers grazed, just enough to make Margot's breath catch. Aurora's eyes flicked up, a question in them, but she didn't say anything. Margot felt her cheeks warm. Outside, the wind rustled through the pines. Inside, the house seemed to breathe with them, slow, careful, expectant. Around noon, Aurora suggested showing Margot her workspace. Only if you don't mind looking at unfinished ideas, Aurora said, leading her down a hallway. I love unfinished things, Margot replied. They feel alive. Aurora paused, giving her a long, thoughtful look. You're full of interesting contradictions, aren't you? Maybe. Or maybe I'm just figuring things out. Aurora didn't press. She just opened the door to her studio. It was bright and quiet, the smell of wood shavings mixed with lemon oil. Models of houses and buildings lined the shelves, some detailed, some only outlines. Large sheets of tracing paper were pinned to a corkboard, layers of pencil strokes forming shapes still in negotiation. Margot walked slowly around the room, fingertips hovering above each surface, noticing the textures, the structure, the subtle imperfections. This is beautiful, she whispered. Aurora leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, observing Margot with an expression that held admiration and something deeper. I never know if it is. But I try. Margot turned toward her. No. You feel things that others miss. It shows. The compliment startled Aurora. She cleared her throat, looking briefly at the floor before meeting Margot's eyes again. Thank you. That means more than you think. They shared a silence that felt almost tangible. Outside, a bird sang somewhere near the window. A faint breeze pushed the glass door at the end of the studio, making it shift a few inches. Margot felt a shiver, not from cold, but from recognition. The door again. Always half open. Always inviting her toward something unnamed. In the afternoon, Aurora suggested they prepare lunch together. "I make a decent risotto," she said. "But it's more fun with company." Margot joined her in the kitchen, chopping onions while Aurora handled the broth. Their movements gradually synced, passing bowls, stirring gently, reaching around each other in small, unspoken choreography. At one point, Aurora leaned in to adjust Margot's hand on the knife. "Like this, you'll avoid cutting yourself," she murmured, her voice barely above a breath. Margot felt Aurora's fingers guiding hers, warm and steady. For a moment, the world shrank to the space where their hands touched. The clink of the pot, the soft simmer of the broth, the faint scent of white wine rising from the pan, all of it fused into a slow, tender suspension. "And you'll get a cleaner cut," Aurora finished softly, stepping back. Margot nodded, unable to speak. Her pulse tapped unevenly in her throat. They ate together at the small breakfast table, sun spilling across the wood. Their conversation drifted easily. They shared stories, small ones, funny ones, the kind that revealed just enough truth to build a fragile bridge. Margot admitted she had never really cooked before. Aurora teased her gently for it. Margot noticed how Aurora laughed, how her shoulders relaxed, how her eyes softened when she talked about her daughter. The afternoon stretched slow and warm. Lillian texted that she'd be late returning, traffic on the highway, some detour delaying her. A mild external complication, but enough to reshape the day. Enough to leave Margot and Aurora with hours they hadn't expected to share alone. They moved to the living room to rest. Aurora curled up on one end of the couch with a soft throw blanket. Margot sat on the other, legs tucked beneath her. Outside, the light dimmed, turning golden, then softer still. The scent of pine drifted through the open door. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" Margot asked quietly. Aurora looked at her, eyebrows lifting just slightly. "Every day for the last year." Margot swallowed. "And before that?" Aurora exhaled slowly. "Sometimes even then." Their eyes held each other's for a long, suspended moment. Something passed between them, trust, maybe. Or recognition. Or a kind of longing neither of them had allowed themselves to acknowledge. Aurora spoke first. "You're braver than you think, Margot." "I don't feel brave." Bravery rarely feels like bravery in the moment. There was a softness in Aurora's voice, a warmth that seeped under Margot's ribs. Margot shifted closer, not enough to be obvious, but enough that the cushion dipped and Aurora noticed. Aurora didn't move away. A strand of Margot's hair fell across her cheek. Aurora reached out without thinking, fingertips brushing it back behind her ear. The touch was gentle, slow, lingering an instant too long. Margot froze, breath catching. Aurora's eyes dropped briefly to Margot's lips before lifting again, as if she'd scolded herself in silence. Margot opened her mouth to say something, but she didn't know what. Aurora seemed just as unsure. The air thickened between them, heavy with possibility. Then Aurora cleared her throat. "We should, probably start thinking about dinner. Lillian will be hungry when she gets back." Margot nodded, though her pulse still fluttered wildly. "Yeah. Dinner." Aurora stood, smoothing the fabric of her pants, trying to compose herself. "Tomorrow, maybe I can show you the lake behind the house. The view is beautiful at sunrise." Margot's breath hitched at the softness in her tone. "I'd like that." Aurora gave her a small, lingering smile, the kind that felt like an unfinished sentence. Then she walked toward the shifting glass door, gently pushing it closed. But not all the way. The night settled slowly around the house, wrapping everything in a velvet hush, as if the world outside were giving Margot and Aurora permission to move closer without interruption. The glass door in the living room stood slightly open again, shifting with the breeze, always that quiet reminder that some things wanted to be crossed, no matter how many times they tried to close them. Dinner came and went easily. Lillian had returned late, full of stories and exhaustion, barely noticing the subtle glances between her mother and her friend. She went straight up to her room afterward, leaving Margot and Aurora alone in the kitchen again, surrounded by the lingering warmth of the oven and the faint aroma of basil and roasted vegetables. Aurora reached into a cabinet to put away a serving bowl, and Margot instinctively moved to help, their bodies brushing lightly in the small space. The contact lasted only a second, but it pulsed through both of them. "Sorry," Margot murmured. "Don't be," Aurora said softly, her voice a warm breath against the quiet. They continued cleaning in slow, overlapping movements, like two people learning a dance without speaking. When Aurora bent down to load the dishwasher, her hair fell over her shoulder. Margot reached out instinctively, stopping herself at the last second. Aurora noticed the hesitation. "It's okay," she said gently, lifting her eyes to Margot's. "You can finish what you were doing." Margot swallowed, then tucked the loose strand of Aurora's hair behind her ear with the lightest touch. Aurora's breath caught just barely, a tiny, involuntary response that sent a warm pulse through Margot's chest. Consent was clear not in words, but in the slow way Aurora leaned into the touch, eyes drifting half-closed for a moment before opening again. The dishwasher hummed softly as it started, filling the silence with a steady rhythm. Aurora stepped back, brushing her palms against her jeans as if grounding herself. "Do you want to sit outside for a bit?" she asked, voice steady but eyes uncertain. "I'd like that," Margot replied. They walked to the deck, stopping near the edge where the wooden boards creaked softly beneath their feet. The air carried the crisp scent of pine and cool night grass. Fireflies blinked across the yard in quiet bursts of gold. The only real light came from the warm glow spilling through the half-open glass door behind them. Aurora crossed her arms against the chill, and without thinking, Margot slipped out of her sweater and offered it. Aurora blinked in surprise. "You'll be cold." "I'm fine." "Take it." Aurora hesitated, then slid her arms into the sleeves. The sweater hung loosely on her, smelling faintly of Margot's perfume, something with citrus and soft musk. Aurora closed her eyes as if absorbing it, and Margot watched, mesmerized by the small, vulnerable movement. They stood quietly for several minutes, breathing the same air, watching the shifting patterns of light in the yard. Margot felt a strange calm settle in her chest, mixed with nervous electricity. She glanced at Aurora, who was staring into the darkness with a distant expression. "Are you okay?" Margot asked gently. Aurora nodded but didn't look at her. "It's been a long year. And a strange week." The understatement made Margot smile, but she didn't push further. Instead, she stepped a little closer, close enough that their sleeves grazed. Aurora felt the movement and finally met her eyes. "You keep doing that," Aurora murmured. "Doing what?" "Standing close like you're not sure if you want to be here or run away." Margot's breath hitched. "I'm not running." Aurora nodded slowly. "No. I don't think you are." A breeze swept across the deck, lifting the end of Aurora's hair. Margot reached forward gently, smoothing it down without fully thinking. Aurora inhaled sharply, the sound soft and almost tender. Margot froze, hands still hovering inches from Aurora's face. "Do you want this?" her eyes asked. Aurora answered without speaking, stepping closer, not touching, just bridging the smallest part of the distance, enough to make her intention unmistakable. The consent wasn't verbal, but it was in the way her eyes softened, in the way her breath mingled with Margot's, in the quiet yes written in the lines of her posture. Margot let her hand fall slowly, fingers brushing the side of Aurora's arm. Aurora closed her eyes, just for a moment. When she opened them again, something unguarded flickered there, desire threaded with fear. Inside, a door shut somewhere upstairs. Both women instinctively leaned back a little, breath catching. When no one emerged, they relaxed again, but the spell had shifted. They weren't pretending anymore. "We should probably," Aurora began. "Probably nothing," Margot whispered. Aurora's lips parted in surprise. Margot stepped closer, only a fraction, but enough that Aurora could feel her warmth, her breath, the trembling possibility between them. Aurora reached out, fingertips brushing Margot's wrist, the lightest touch, like tracing the edge of a dream. "Margot," she said softly, almost warning herself. Margot lifted her hand to Aurora's cheek, barely touching her skin. Aurora didn't pull away. She leaned in, slowly, cautiously, like approaching a threshold she wasn't sure she could cross. Their foreheads touched first, gently, tentatively. A shared breath. A single moment suspended between what they were and what they were becoming. Then they pulled back an inch, eyes meeting in a silent agreement. The kiss was soft, painfully soft, more a question than an action. A brush of lips. A tremble of breath. A brief meeting before instinct made them both step away again, hearts pounding, faces flushed in the moonlight. Margot touched her own lips, startled by how warm they felt. Aurora pressed a hand to her chest, steadying her breathing. "We shouldn't have done that," Aurora whispered, but the conflict in her voice betrayed her. Margot searched her face. "Do you regret it?" Aurora looked torn, a mix of longing and fear. "I don't know what I'm allowed to feel right now." Silence filled the deck again, but it wasn't empty. It was full of everything they hadn't said. Full of the echo of that kiss, of the almost, of the yes hidden inside their hesitation. Lillian's voice called faintly from inside. "Mom? Margot? Are you still awake?" Aurora straightened immediately, pulling off the sweater, handing it back with trembling fingers. "You should, probably go in first." "Aurora." "Please," Aurora whispered. "Tomorrow. We can talk tomorrow." The glass door swayed behind them, half open, as if waiting. Margot hesitated one last second, then stepped inside, heart pounding so loudly she could hardly hear her own breath. Aurora remained on the deck alone, looking out at the darkness, her fingers touching her lips like she wasn't sure whether she should smile or run. Morning came quieter than usual, as if the house itself sensed that something fragile had shifted overnight. Margot lay awake long before sunrise, staring at the ceiling of the guest room, feeling that first kiss replay over and over in the space between her ribs. It hadn't been long, nor bold, nor planned, but it had been real. Real in a way nothing else in her life had ever been. She pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to calm her heartbeat. She didn't know what Aurora was thinking. She didn't know if Aurora wanted that moment to vanish or return. And she didn't know how to exist in the same house without reaching for her again. The faint sound of footsteps downstairs finally pulled her out of bed. When she descended the stairs, she found Aurora standing in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a coffee mug, staring at the half-open glass door as the early light crept in. Her expression was unreadable, not cold, not warm, but suspended in a quiet battle. Margot hesitated. "Morning." Aurora turned slowly. "Morning." Their eyes met for 1 second, and Margot felt the echo of last night press between them like a heartbeat they shared. Aurora quickly looked away. "I made coffee," she said softly, motioning toward the brewing pot. Margot poured a cup, though she barely tasted it. Silence thickened between them like unsaid words collecting in the air. Finally, Aurora spoke. "About last night." Margot stiffened. "Yeah." Aurora exhaled, long and shaky. "It was unexpected." "Unexpected doesn't mean unwanted." Aurora flinched almost imperceptibly. "Margot. I'm older, I'm her mother, You're you. And I like you," Margot said, voice trembling but honest. Aurora closed her eyes, her jaw tightening. You don't understand how complicated this is. Margot swallowed. Then explain it to me. But Aurora didn't. She just stood there, staring at the door as if hoping it would close on its own and take the problem with it. The house was interrupted by the sound of Lillian coming down the stairs. Aurora stepped away from Margot instantly, almost too sharply. Lillian noticed the tension in the room but didn't comment. Not yet. They spent the morning pretending nothing had happened. Aurora avoided prolonged eye contact, moving around the house with a new carefulness, as if she feared her own shadow might betray her. Margot felt the distance like a physical ache. After lunch, Lillian announced she needed to sort some photography equipment in her room. When she left them alone again, the silence became unbearable. Margot broke first. Please talk to me. Aurora set down the dish she was drying and leaned against the counter, her voice low. I haven't felt something like that in years. Maybe ever. And that terrifies me. Margot stepped closer. It terrifies me too. Aurora shook her head. You don't have a child to protect. Or a reputation. Or a life that already fell apart once. If I make the wrong choice again. This isn't the same. I'm not him, Margot whispered. Aurora flinched again, but she didn't step back when Margot approached. Her voice came out barely audible. You're also not supposed to be mine. The words landed heavy, honest, fragile. Before Margot could respond, the front door swung open suddenly, and Lillian called from the hallway. Mom, did I leave my camera bag downstairs? Aurora stepped away instantly, putting distance between them so quickly it felt like being cut. Check near the sofa, Aurora said, forcing a steady voice. Margot's chest tightened. When Lillian left again, Margot faced Aurora. Are you ashamed of what happened? Aurora looked stunned. No. God, no. She closed her eyes for a long moment. I'm ashamed of how much I wanted it. Margot felt her heart twist. Aurora straightened her posture, steadying herself against the counter. We need space. I need time. We can't do this while Lillian is here. Margot opened her mouth to argue, but Aurora gently raised a hand, a silent plea. Margot, please. Not because I don't want you. But because I do. The honesty hit harder than rejection. Margot took a step closer, unable to stop herself. Then at least don't pretend last night didn't mean anything. Aurora's voice cracked. It meant too much. Margot reached out, fingers brushing Aurora's wrist. Aurora didn't pull away, she inhaled sharply, her body reacting before her mind could protest. But then she withdrew her hand slowly, trembling. Not now, she whispered. Margot nodded, hurt but understanding. They spent the rest of the afternoon in separate rooms. Margot walked through the hallway, touching the walls, trying to breathe through the ache in her chest. She stopped by the glass door again. The breeze pushed it open an inch, its usual defiance. Something inside her mirrored it, wanting to open wider, even if it invited trouble. That evening, a storm rolled in unexpectedly. Rain tapped against the windows, steady and cold. Thunder rumbled far off. Lillian set up her equipment at the dining table, headphones in, lost in her editing. The storm made the house feel smaller, pushing Margot and Aurora into the same orbit even when they tried to avoid it. At one point, power flickered, and Lillian cursed. If the Wi-Fi drops, I swear I'm giving up photography. Aurora laughed lightly. I'll reset it. It usually comes back. She disappeared into the hallway, and Margot followed her without quite planning to. Aurora glanced back, surprised, then sighed softly. Margot, don't. But Margot stepped closer anyway, her voice breaking. I don't know how to stay here without wanting you. Aurora leaned against the wall, rain casting shifting shadows across her face. And I don't know how to want you without hurting someone I love. The vulnerability in her voice was devastating. Margot moved in front of her, close but not touching. Their breaths mingled in the dim light of the hallway. "Tell me to stop," Margot whispered. "Tell me you don't want this." Aurora's lips parted, trembling. "I can't." Margot reached up slowly, carefully, giving Aurora every chance to pull away. Her hand hovered near Aurora's cheek, not touching, just waiting. Aurora leaned in, just barely, but enough to make her choice clear. And then, footsteps. Lillian again, coming down the hall. Aurora instantly stepped away, breath shaking. Margot closed her eyes, her chest burning with the whiplash of wanting and retreating. Lillian walked past them, oblivious. Wi-Fi's back. Crisis averted. Aurora forced a smile. Margot couldn't move. When Lillian went upstairs again, Aurora whispered, almost to herself. "This is going to break something." Margot's voice cracked. "Or fix something." Aurora shook her head, tears barely forming. "Not tonight. Please." She turned, retreating toward her bedroom. Margot watched her go, every instinct screaming to follow, to close the door behind them, to choose the thing they both wanted. But she didn't move. Aurora reached her door, opening it halfway. She paused there, leaning on the frame, as if fighting herself. She looked back at Margot with an expression so raw it felt like a confession. The door stayed half open, a question, a possibility, a fear. Aurora lifted her hand slightly, like she might say something, but the words died on her tongue. She closed her eyes instead, giving the smallest, quietest shake of her head. Then she stepped inside. And left the door between them neither closed nor open, only aching. The storm passed some time before dawn, leaving the world wrapped in a heavy, softened silence. The air felt washed and new, carrying the scent of wet pine and cool earth through the slightly open glass door of the guest room. Margot lay awake again, only this time the anxiety that had twisted her chest the night before had dissolved into something deeper, a pull she could no longer deny, no matter how she tried to breathe past it. She could hear faint sounds upstairs, footsteps, a door closing, the smallest shift of movement. Aurora had barely spoken to her since retreating behind that half-open doorway the night before. But Margot could still feel her, the warmth of her breath, the ache in her eyes, the way she had looked back as if she wanted to stay but didn't trust herself to do so. Margot pushed the blanket away and stood slowly, the wooden floor cool beneath her feet. She moved toward the hallway, drawn by something that lived between hope and certainty. As she reached the top of the stairs, she saw Aurora standing near the window at the end of the landing, wrapped in a thin sweater, hair falling loose down her back. The early morning light touched her gently, outlining her figure in soft silver. Aurora turned at the quiet sound of Margot's approach. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, neither hiding nor pretending. The air between them shifted, fragile at first, then steadying, as if both finally recognized the truth they had been circling for days. "Couldn't sleep?" Aurora asked softly. Margot shook her head. "Not really." "You?" Aurora's voice was barely a whisper. "No." They stood there in the hush of the early hour, the rest of the house still asleep. Margot took a small step forward, and Aurora didn't move away. Her shoulders relaxed, her breath deepened, and the fear that had weighed her down seemed to tremble for a moment before loosening its hold. "Aurora," Margot said, her voice trembling with honesty she could no longer hold back, "I can't stop thinking about you." Aurora closed her eyes, letting the words settle inside her like a truth she'd refused too long. When she opened them again, something had shifted, resolved, softened, accepted. "Margot, last night I was afraid. Afraid of wanting you. Afraid of what it meant. Afraid of repeating past mistakes." She hesitated. But I'm more afraid of staying silent about what I feel. Margot's breath caught. Then don't stay silent. Aurora exhaled shakily, and it was all the invitation Margot needed to step closer. Their hands brushed first, lightly, as if testing the texture of truth. Aurora didn't pull away this time. Instead, she turned her palm upward, letting Margot's fingers slide into hers. The contact was soft, warm, steady in a way that made both of them feel suddenly safer. "We can't pretend we don't feel this," Aurora whispered. "I don't want to pretend anymore," Margot replied. Aurora lifted her free hand, slowly, giving Margot time to step back if she needed to. But Margot didn't move. When Aurora's fingertips touched her cheek, Margot let out a breath that felt like release, pure, honest release. Aurora leaned in, not with urgency but with careful, deliberate truth. Their foreheads brushed first, just as they had on the deck the night before. Only this time, the hesitation didn't hold them apart. It ushered them gently closer, like a door finally opening on its own. Their lips met again, slower, deeper, fuller. The kiss grew naturally from the tenderness they had carried in silence, unfolding like something long overdue. Neither rushed. Neither tried to lead. They simply let themselves feel, breathing into the moment, letting it anchor them in a way that felt both grounding and liberating. Aurora's hands moved to Margot's shoulders, then her arms, tracing the contours with a reverence that made Margot's chest ache with emotion. Margot responded with the same gentle curiosity, fingertips brushing Aurora's jaw, her collarbone, the soft fabric of her sweater. Their movements were quiet, unhurried, as if they were reading each other piece by piece, finally understanding a language that had always existed between them. They moved together toward Aurora's room, guided not by impulse but by the pull of something inevitable and deeply chosen. Aurora paused at the doorway, the same doorway she had left half open the night before, and looked at Margot with a silent question. Margot answered not with words but by taking Aurora's hand and stepping inside with her. The room was dim, lit by the soft gray of morning. Rainwater clung to the window, scattering tiny reflections of light across the floor. Aurora touched Margot's cheek again, slower now, as if memorizing her. Margot leaned into her touch, breathing in the warm scent of her skin, a mix of sleep, lavender soap, and something uniquely hers. Their bodies met in small, careful movements, a touch to the waist, a brush of lips along the neck, fingers tracing the curve of a shoulder. Nothing hurried. Nothing forced. Everything intentional. Aurora guided Margot gently but with certainty, her hands steady, her breath warm and reassuring. Margot responded with growing confidence, allowing the unfamiliar sensation of being fully wanted, fully seen, to settle inside her. When Aurora kissed her again, deeper this time, Margot felt something ignite, not the fleeting warmth she had known with others, but a genuine, overwhelming sense of being alive in her own skin. Her breath trembled, her body softened, and she let herself follow every feeling without fear. Aurora whispered her name once, only once, and the sound carried so much tenderness it made Margot's eyes sting with emotion. She had never felt anything like this. Not even close. Not a shadow, not an approximation. This was real. This was hers. Their bodies found a rhythm soft enough to feel safe, slow enough to savor, full enough to stay engraved. Aurora held her gently, kissing her shoulder, her hair, the hollow of her collarbone, touching her like someone who understood not just desire, but devotion. Margot moved with her, letting the warmth build naturally, letting the sensations bloom from the inside out, letting herself trust what was happening without hiding from it. For the first time in her life, Margot felt pleasure that wasn't a performance or a guess. It wasn't cold or confusing, or the half-hearted mimicry she had known before. It was hers, anchored in emotion, guided by connection, born from being with someone who truly saw her. Not a single moment was rushed. Every movement was wrapped in permission, in breath, in quiet murmurs against the skin. And when Margot finally surrendered to the wave of warmth spreading through her, she felt a fullness she had never known, not intensity, but truth. Pure, undeniable truth. Afterward, they lay together in the stillness of morning, Aurora's hand tracing slow circles on Margot's back. The outside world felt impossibly far away. "I didn't expect this," Aurora whispered. "Neither did I. But I needed it more than I knew." Aurora kissed her forehead, a soft, lingering touch that carried gratitude and disbelief. "You make me feel brave again." Margot smiled against her shoulder. "You make me feel like myself." They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in warmth and understanding. When they finally rose, sunlight had grown bright enough to fill the room. Aurora reached for the glass door down the hallway, the same one that had been opening on its own for days. Margot watched her gently close it. But then Aurora reopened it, just a few inches, not by accident this time, but by choice. A mirror of the beginning. A door not stuck or nudged by wind, a door intentionally left ajar. A sign that what once frightened them now invited them forward. Because some truths don't need permission. They only need courage. And some loves begin the moment we stop running from ourselves. A soft breeze moved the curtain again, but instead of confusion, it carried peace. Sometimes the heart only opens when we finally stop trying to close it. What part of this journey toward truth resonated the most with your own life? If this story touched your heart, share your truth in the comments. And if this journey stayed with you, please consider subscribing to Secret Garden Stories, leaving a comment, and sharing it with friends, forums, and social media. Your support helps this channel grow and build a world with more love and less prejudice. Tulip. Thank you for being here.